Regular viewers of my channel will already know that I make 3D printable action figures and might have already seen my figures on YouTube and Instagram. I've been making 3D printable action figures for over 2 years now, and in that time, 3D printable action figures have come such a long way. I've tried many different resins and brands that make resins with qualities applicable for action figures, such as the ABS-like resins that most brands offer. However, in my experience, the most reliable resins for action figures have been from the Resione line of resins. And in this video, we'll explore a new offering from Resione, the Resione Tough74. This resin is specifically made for action figures, so let's get into it and explore what Resione has to offer. Now before we start things off, let's address the sponsorship situation for this video. Today's video is not sponsored by Resione. The resins used in this video have been provided to me by Resione in both the black and grey colors, but Resione did not have any control over what I say or show in this video. Resione will be seeing this video at the same time as everyone when it is released publicly on YouTube. So with that being said, the video contains my genuine opinions on the resin and a showcase of everything I've tested with the resin, and I will highlight both the good and the bad qualities of this product. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get back to our video. So first things first, let's talk about my print settings. These files were printed on a Uniformation GK2 with the heat setting set at 35 degrees since it's really cold where I live. The files were printed at a 4 micron layer height with the exposure of 2.8 seconds per layer, 5 bottom layers exposed for 45 seconds, and cured for 30 minutes post cleaning. So the first test I did with this resin is to print out an articulated leg so we can compare our new resin and how it performs against the other resins I've used for 3D printing action figures. Here we have from left to right the M58, anti-impact, M58 plus anti-impact, Tough74, and a ABS filament FDM print just as a sneak preview. Here is a summary of all the different resins. The M58 has a slightly less flexible structure, so connecting the parts is slightly more difficult and the joints can be slightly loose at times due to the non-friction nature of the resin. The anti-impact has a lot of flex when heated, so it allows for easy assembly, but this can also cause the parts to be slightly loose. The M58 and anti-impact mix holds a lot of flex and gets tighter in the joints as well. So this resin has been my current go-to resin for all of my 3D printed action figures. If you want to see how I mix this resin, check out the link above to get a comprehensive guide on how I mix my resins. Now for the Tough74 resin, this resin is not as flexible as the other resins like the anti-impact, but it is slightly more flexible than the M58 while heated. The key thing about this resin is that it seems to add a ton of grip on the joints. So the joints feel tighter while moving and it really holds different positions well, even at different articulation ranges. So after cleaning and curing the resin, I wanted to see how this resin will behave during the post-processing part of the process. The sanding process was fairly simple for this resin. I opted to go with a wet sanding method for some parts to remove the small knobs of support from the back, and the resin did not get any big gashes and I could clean it up really well using the sanding method. However, there are some visible scratches on the parts after sanding since I did not have a very high grit sandpaper, so to cover that up I needed to add a layer of paint just to clean up the parts. The grey Tough74 looks clean, however with the black resin there is a slight hint of translucency. There's a slight hint of blue or green that peeks through from underneath, which makes the resin look almost black but not exactly black. I think that using it straight up for black colored parts would work with decent results. However, the K Plus has a much deeper black in comparison, and you would go a long way with adding a thin coat of black just to get better finish. In terms of the actual painting, I found that since I'm using the black version of Resione Tough74, it did not take paint as quickly due to the dark resin. It was specifically more dark since I was using the green paints and the coverage was not the best with the green paints. All paints used in this video are from Vallejo, so it's a very decent brand of paints. However, with enough layers, 2 hand-painted base layers and 2 airbrush layers to even everything out, the paint started to look really nice. Another small issue I came across for this print, and I'm not sure if it was because of the cold temperatures in Melbourne or because of my old can of Rust-Oleum semi-gloss, there was a spotty application of the top coat. It did give the figure a bit of a texture, so there is something to take note of when you're printing your figure, but for the head, to avoid the spottiness, I used some Mr. Super Clear semi-gloss, and that did not leave any texturing on the figure, which was a lot better. The assembly of the figure was quite seamless and similar to all the resins that I've used in the past. The Resione Tough74 is slightly less flexible, so I had to heat up the parts for a slightly longer duration of time to get the same amount of flex. Great thing about this resin is that it quickly goes back into its original state without any issues, so joints can actually be tight. and it holds its place. Due to everything being hand painted, there are some scratches and chips on the paint, but nothing detracts from the overall look, so that's pretty good. In all honesty, I'm very satisfied with how the assembly of the figure was, and all the parts fit in really well. The best part and the highlight of this resin is the grip and joint smoothness of this resin. The joints feel very smooth, and there is a hint of stiffness in the joints that feels sturdy and secure. So I just had a lot of confidence going into posing this figure, and the gripping strength of the joint is excellent and definitely the standout quality on this resin. Now that we've done all these initial tests, let's deep dive into the Tough74. The resin is targeted specifically at action figures, so what qualifies this resin for action figures? Resione had already made, in my opinion, one of the best resins for 3D printing action figures with the Resione M58 and the anti-impact mix. So how is this resin really different? So the first thing that comes to mind is, in terms of pricing, the Resione M58 costs about $55 per bottle, the anti-impact costs about $65 per bottle, and the Tough74 comes in cheaper than the rest at $50 a bottle. So immediately it's kicking off with a positive. For my action figure prints, I'm typically able to print about 6 to 7 action figures per liter of resin. That means in terms of pricing, M58 cost me around $9 per figure and the anti-impact cost me about $11 per figure. However, with the Tough74, it cost me only around $8 a figure. Another good thing about this resin is that we have two colors to choose from. The black and the gray both look great, and comparing it to the other Resione offerings, you can get the same quality of resins in two different colors, which was not available before. The key outstanding quality about this resin is that there's a lot of grip and friction in the joints. The parts are slightly more difficult to assemble due to the resin stiffness, but the posability and the tightness of the joints alone make this resin worth your time. So let's quickly take a look at the figure we made in this video before we get to the conclusions. All the credits on the painting of this figure's face and all color mixing goes to my wife. She did an incredible job with the skin tones and the green glow in the eyes. I think it turned out incredible, and thank the Lord I did not mess up the paints again with the top coat like I did with Big Steel. The figure holds pose really well. The resin feels sturdy and does not feel like it will break on me. It does not feel very much like an injection molded plastic figure part like Mayfix or Marvel Legends. Those figures slightly feel more softer and more rubbery. However, the Tough74 feels so much more smoother than the other resins, which is probably why painting it was a bit more difficult, but the joints almost feel buttery smooth while still sticking enough to hold the pose when required. Articulating the figure is what feels the best, where I previously had an issue with the M58 or the anti-impact feeling slightly loose over time. It feels like the Tough74 will have durability and the grip strength over time due to how the resin feels in hand. The first figure I printed out using the Tough74 had a boot cut on the figure, and to this day it still remains very tight, and I think I first assembled it about 3 weeks ago. Similar to all the Resione resins that have come before, there is no grinding or dusting on the parts. So overall, Resione has come out with a banger resin to prototype action figures or make small custom batch of action figures at home. The resin has great properties that make it suitable for action figure printing. I did not find any differences between the grey and the black resins in terms of quality or exposure times, which is great. And I've also heard that Resione intend to introduce more colors to this resin line. So if that happens, it will be very exciting to get this resin in other exciting colors that will hopefully make paint rub less of an issue. Introducing this resin at a cheaper price point also makes it an affordable alternative to mixing two more expensive resins, and it is definitely more beginner friendly since you are only using the one resin straight from the bottle. I would 100% recommend this resin if you want to try printing out action figures without the hassle of mixing different resins. The resin is durable, strong, and has the best joint gripping strength I have seen in any resin I have tried, and just for that I feel like this is going to be my go-to resin for the foreseeable future. Although mixing this resin in with some other resins might give it improvements, straight out of the bottle, this is the best resin I've tried for action figures. So there you have it, an in-depth review of the Resione Tough74. Please let me know your thoughts on this video, and I hope you enjoyed the action figure that I printed in this video too. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel so that I can bring you guys more content and reviews. I hope to see you all in my next video, so I'll see you then. So post the video, I wanted to add some behind the scenes stuff that happens when I print out my action figures. When I first started making my action figures, I would always treat my figures with a lot of care and try to not bend them the wrong way or use too much pressure, but my wife would just touch the figures and they would just break. So over time it became tradition in my household for us to wife proof my prints. So every time I try out a new print, my wife gets the parts to test out and wife proof them as a test. And also, because not everyone wants toxic resins and cleaning materials at home, I have been working on a FDM printable action figure along with my resin figures so that you have more options moving forward. And my Bamboo Labs P1S has been amazing so far, and I'll post more progress soon.